Hello. I'm reading a mystery and thought it'd be fun to share it with you guys. I already started it, so I haven't started that much of it. So what I can do is read the synopsis and get right into it. For anyone who might be bored, anyone who might be at work and they just need something to listen to while they work, or if anyone just likes to hear nighttime stories before they go to bed, this would be a great story to listen to. It's a mystery. It's about it's a murder mystery, a library murder mystery. What is the original meaning of the word clue? Answering tricky reference questions like this one is more than enough excitement for library director Lindsay Norris, at least until another murder is committed in her cozy hometown of Briar Creek, Connecticut. Carrie, the president of the Friends of the Library, has been accused of murdering her husband. The evidence is stacking up against Carrie, but neither Lindsay nor the Briar Creek Crafternoon Club is buying it. Okay, so let's see. The name of the story is called Do or Die. I do have some sleeping babies back. Well, one. Okay, and this is by Jen McKinley. And thank you to anyone that joins, just in case I don't get a chance to look up at any comments. All right. I could not believe that Lucy agreed to marry Cecil when she was so obviously in love with George, Violet LaRue declared. Hi, best friends. Thank you for joining in. Lindsay Norris glanced up from the lace scarf she was attempting to crochet. What had she been thinking when she thought she could do anything with this cobweb-like yarn? It was maddening. Violet's crochet hook was swooping away row after row on a lace pillow cover that she was making for her niece, hi Emma, who was getting married in the spring. Violet was using a pearl cotton thread that gave the star pattern a subtle luster when it caught the light just right. It was to be the ring bearer's pillow, and it was sure to be lovely. She was expected to marry within her station, Nancy Peyton said. Nancy was Lindsay's landlord and had been teaching her a variety of needlecrafts for almost 9 months now. Currently, their Crafternoon club was working on crochet projects. It wasn't going well for Lindsay. As if sensing her annoyance, Nancy put aside the handbag she was working on and took Lindsay's mangled seafoam, green mohair, and cotton cashmere skeins out of her hands and began to fix them. Hi everyone, it is called Do or Die. It's a mystery. Thank you, Lazaro. Hi Emily, hi. Okay, Ajin, no problem, I understand. It's called Do or Die. Hi Robin. Oh, thank you for checking in. Oh, you're so nice. You're my favorite people too. I'm just reading a story, you guys, for anyone that's bored or that likes mysteries, or if it's almost your bedtime, or if you're just getting up. So thank you for listening in. I appreciate you guys. If anyone wants to see the babies, just let me know. I do have them there ready to grab them. Don't tell me you started already, Charlene said as she entered the room. You always do that. That's because you're always late, Violet said. No, I'm not, Charlene argued. She took off her coat and hat and hung them on the rack. She glanced at the 3 women looking at her. Anne, am I? Yeah, you are, Lindsay said. Charlene huffed out of breath. She was wearing a stunning red turtleneck sweater, which complemented the rich brown hue of her skin, over tailored black corduroys, and black boots. Well, as Oscar Wilde said, he was always late on principle. His principle being that punctuality is the thief of time, Charlene said as she took the cushy seat beside Lindsay. Let's see. Okay, sorry. Very clever, but you might want to go for better never than late, Violet said, George Bernard Shaw. Lindsay and Nancy glanced between the mother and daughter. Who's the mother and daughter? I didn't realize there was a mother and daughter in the story. Okay, so Charlene, oh, Violet, okay, Violet and Charlotte must be mother and daughter. Charlene was the image of her mother, Violet. In other words, she was gorgeous, but even more than that, she shared her mother's formidable intelligence and love of literature. Violet had been a stage actress in New York in her youth, while Charlene was currently a local newscaster in New Haven. But both women had the ability to command the attention of any room they entered. Lindsay figured it must be in their genetic code. Nicely played, Mom, Charlene laughed, and Violet bowed her head in acknowledgement. But I thought we were discussing E.M. Forster today. What have I missed? Not much, Nancy said. Her blue eyes twinkled as she added, just Violet being testy because Lucy didn't go off with George right away. Not much of a book if Lucy picked the right man at the start. Oh, okay, so I was thinking that there really was someone who was getting married, but they're talking about the book that they're going over. She pulled the ripple afghan she was working on out of her project bag. It was the perfect weather to work on a blanket, and hers was coming together nicely in rows of black, gray, and country blue. The small room boasted cushy chairs and a toasty fire in the gas fireplace. Recently, Lindsay had added a couple of short bookshelves where she kept extra copies of crafting books for the club to pursue during meetings. The lone large window in the room looked out over the town park and offered a picturesque view of the bay beyond. Today the sea was a deep gray, reflecting the steely cold January skies that loomed above. The Crafternoon Club met every Thursday in this small room in the Briar Creek Public Library, of which Lindsay was the director. Oh, great. Thanks for settling in, Robin. I appreciate you. You've been up since 3:30 this morning. Someone said they're oiled up. I don't know if they're oiled up for the story or not, but thank you guys for being here. Okay. Let's see. Lindsay was the director to work on a craft. Oh, Lindsay was the director to work on a craft, discuss their latest book, and eat. This week it had been Lindsay's turn to provide the food, so she had baked apple cinnamon muffins, brought a large block of brie. I don't know if you say brie or brie, that cheese, Brie, with wheat crackers, and made both coffee and tea. Who picked the right man at the start? Beth Stanley asked from the doorway. She was dressed as a giant spider, and the other women watched as she turned sideways to fit her 8 limbs, 4 of which were add-ons. Thank you for the hearts. Okay, Faz Wayne. Thank you for the hearts, you guys. Oh my goodness. Here, let me help you, Mary Murphy offered as she followed Beth into the room and held the back of Beth's story time costume so she could wiggle out of it. Thanks. I have a new respect for spiders, Beth said. I had a heck of a time getting all my legs to go in the right direction while I read Mrs. Spider's tea party to the kids. I whacked poor Lily Dawson on the bum with one of them. Lindsay exchanged a smile with Charlene. Beth was the children's librarian, and the kids adored her, mostly because she was a big kid herself. When she did the hokey pokey, her enthusiasm made everyone in the library feel the need to put their left foot in, as it were. Beth hung her spider outfit. Beth hung her spider out. Sorry, one second. Beth hung her spider outfit on the coat rack by the door, which was already straining under the weight of all their winter coats and hats, and plopped into one of the available seats. Mary hung up her coat as well, sat beside Beth, and pulled out the tea cozy she was working on for her mother. It was white with retro aqua starbursts on it. She thought it would match her mother's vintage 1950s kitchen perfectly. Mary was a native of Briar Creek and had grown up on one of the Thumb Islands out in the bay. Currently, she ran the Blue Anchor Cafe with her husband Ian and was known for making the best clam chowder in the state. Her parents still lived out on Belle Island, and Lindsay wished she could see what their vintage kitchen looked like. As she watched the cozy take shape in Mary's skilled hands, Lindsay couldn't help but feel the teensiest bit jealous. She had a feeling if she attempted a tea cozy, it would turn out looking like a muffler for an elephant. "How far have you gotten in the discussion?" Mary asked. "Not very. We were talking about how a short room with a view would have been if Lucy had picked the right man from the start." She glanced at her watch. It was only 15 minutes past the hour, which gave them plenty of time to finish their discussion. Being employees of the library, both Lindsay and Beth had to confine their Crafternoon club time to their lunch hours. Beth glanced around the group. "Well, I for one am relieved that she picked the clunker first and stayed with him. It made me feel like less of an idiot." Violet reached over and patted Beth's knee in sympathy. "It happens to all of us, hun. Which is why sometimes it is easier to fall in love within the safety of a book," Nancy agreed. "I hear that," Charlene said. This was one of the many reasons Lindsay loved her Crafternoon friends. They were made up of all different ages, ethnicities, and socioeconomic backgrounds. But the one thing they had in common was a deep and abiding love of books. Yeah, basically, they were all nerds. "Well, the only man I plan to date for a while is Austin's Mr. Darcy," Beth said. "He always makes such a nice transitional man between boyfriends." "Honestly, neither Cecil nor George is really doing it for me." Beth had recently gotten out of an unfortunate relationship, and Lindsay was sure it had clouded her reading of the novel. She knew her own recent breakup had changed her take on the story. Her former fiance, John, had taken up with one of his graduate students while she was in the midst of being downsized from her archivist job. John was a law professor at Yale, and he had never seemed the type to be interested in chasing the cute young co-ed, but obviously a good education was no buffer against the male midlife crisis. Lindsay knew she was better off without him, but still it chafed to be tossed aside after 5 years of thinking she had found the one, especially when her career had been on the skids as well. She shook her head, refusing to dwell in the past. She had a good job in a nice town where she was surrounded by friends. Where was the down? "Here you are, dear." Nancy handed back Lindsay's scarf, and it was all perfectly tidy with the extra mohair rolled into a neat little ball. How very kind and annoying. There was a sharp knock on the door frame, and Lindsay turned expecting to see Miss Cole, one of her crankier library employees, standing there with her usual scowl of disapproval. But no, it was Carrie Rushton. Carrie was a nurse at the local hospital and an Uber volunteer in the community of Briar Creek. She was on several boards and committees and always seemed to be busy doing something for someone. Hi, Lindsay. I hate to interrupt, she said, but could I talk to you? Absolutely. Happy to put her crochet aside so as to not risk tangling what Nancy had untangled, Lindsay carefully tucked it into her canvas tote bag. She rose to her feet and crossed the room in a few strides. What can I do for you? Well, Carrie paused and bit her lip. It looked as if she was trying to decide what to say. Could you come to our Friends of the Library meeting tonight? Carrie was wearing her hospital scrubs under her winter coat, so she was on her way either to or from work. Her long, dark brown hair was knotted at the nape of her neck and fastened into place by a large plastic hair clip. Streaks of gray were just beginning to show at her temples, while a hint of wrinkles had begun to form in the corners of her eyes. Carrie was on the short side of medium in height, and her figure was gently rounded as if she had been built specifically for giving hugs. She had a maternal softness about her that Lindsay felt sure was one of the reasons she was such a popular nurse. Yes, I can make it, Lindsay said. Any particular reason? Carrie let out a worried sigh. We're having the vote tonight. Ah, Lindsay said. Now it was all coming into focus. Bill Sint is still mad that you're running against him. He called me a usurper, Carrie said. She turned her nose up in the air as she said it, and Lindsay could just see Bill saying it in the same snooty way. I suppose he could have called you worse, Lindsay said with a chuckle. The way he said it, it didn't sound like it could be much worse. Lindsay patted her shoulder. I'll be there to keep the peace, I promise. What time? We're meeting in the lecture room at 7, Carrie said. The library closed at 8, but Lindsay knew that Jessica Gallo, the library assistant for the adult department, was scheduled to work, so the reference desk would be covered and she could attend the meeting. I'll see you. Carrie, what is taking you so long? A whiny voice interrupted. I've been waiting for hours. Marcus, we've only been here for 5 minutes, Carrie said over her shoulder. She turned back to Lindsay and said, Sorry, he's overtired. Lindsay raised her eyebrows in surprise. Carrie was apologizing for her husband, Marcus Rushton, as if he were a toddler who had missed nap time. She glanced over. Hi, you guys. Thanks for joining. She glanced over Carrie's shoulder and saw a middle-aged man, bundled from his thick boots and puffy purple coat up to his scarf-wrapped head, stomping his feet behind her as if he were contemplating throwing a tantrum. No problem. Why do we have to be here anyway? Marcus interrupted her again. Books are stupid. I mean, who wants to waste their time reading when you can watch TV or surf the net? Excuse me, Lindsay said. She glanced more closely at Marcus and could just make out a beaky nose and a pair of eyes that were too close together. That was all the skin he had exposed. She bit back the suggestion that he take his scarf and go for a full head wrap, but just barely. Oh, you're her, the new librarian, he said. He looked her up and down. I thought people said you were hot. Marcus, Carrie gasped, obviously horrified. What? He asked. The way everyone was talking about her, I expected a little more Baywatch Pam Anderson and a little less old Meg Ryan. Lindsay blinked at him. She had no idea what to say to this. Obviously, Marcus found her lacking in the looks department, but she was hard pressed to think of that as a bad thing. Lindsay pulled her gaze away from him and looked at Carrie. About tonight. Yes, I'll be there. Thanks, Carrie said. Yippity doo, can we go now? Marcus asked. Sheesh, if you ask me, they should just sell all these old books and turn this building into someplace fun, like an arcade with mini golf. Now that would be cool. He turned on his heel and stomped toward the exit as if expecting Carrie to follow on his heels like a faithful puppy. Lindsay pressed her lips together to keep herself from saying what she was thinking, which would have blistered Marcus Rushton even through the layers of his purple puffy coat. "I'm so sorry," Carrie said. Her face flushed a deep shade of crimson. "He's not much of a reader." Lindsay forced her lips to curve up. "That's all right. Not everyone is a book person." Carrie squeezed her hand in thanks and turned to go. "I'd better. I'll see you later." "I'll be there," Lindsay said. The group was silent when she sat back down in her seat. They must have heard. Lindsay blew out a breath, not knowing what to say. "Mark Rushton is as stupid now as he was as a child," Nancy Peyton finally said. "He went from having his mama take care of him to having his wife take care of him. I hate to say it, but that man is a dreadful waste of space." "Talk about picking the wrong guy," Charlene said. "Carrie is so nice. How did she hook up with him?" "For exactly that reason," Mary Murphy said. "She is too nice." "We all went to high school together, and Mrs. Rushton asked Carrie if she would be Mark's prom date because no one else would go with him. Carrie said yes, and she hasn't been able to shake loose of him ever since." Wow, that is crazy insane. Thank you guys for listening in. I heard he went on disability for a slipped disc in his back a few years ago and doesn't even work now, Violet said with a tisk. "Two kids in college and poor Carrie has to do it all," Nancy said. "She has a job, does all the cooking, cleaning, and upkeep on their house. Do you know last year she re-roofed her house by herself? Marcus refused to help because of his back, and she couldn't afford to hire anyone." "Sully and Ian went over to help," Mary said. "They were surprised to find that Marcus could pick up and move his flat screen TV during Sunday's football game, but couldn't apparently hammer down some shingles." "Now that her kids are grown, why doesn't she leave him?" Lindsay asked. It must be the nurse in her," Nancy said. "She's always taking care of someone," Violet agreed. "She's just a good person," Beth said. Lindsay considered herself to be a pretty good person, but she couldn't imagine staying with someone who treated her so badly. She wondered if Carrie ever thought about leaving Marcus, but then reminded herself that it was none of her business. "Let's get back to George and Cecil," she said. She didn't like gossiping about someone she liked. "I don't know about you, but suddenly Cecil is not looking so bad to me." Okay, so remember, you guys, this is the ladies at the book club, and they're discussing their book. So Cecil and George are characters in the book. There were a few sheepish laughs, and then Mary led the charge into the brie, and crackers, and all thought of Marcus Rushton was erased by good food and good conversation. It wasn't until the Friends of the Library meeting that evening that Lindsay thought again about Carrie and her marriage. It's kind of weird because some of them work at the library, then they have this book club at the library, but then they also have a meeting. They also have a Friends of the Library meeting. So I was a little confused about that at first. So they've got two different meetings that they hold at the library, a book club and then a Friends of the Library meeting. Okay, so back to the story. It wasn't until the Friends of the Library meeting that evening that Lindsay thought again about Carrie and her marriage. She sat on the window seat at the back of the lecture room, which had once been the upstairs study of the sea captain who had originally built the stone building that the library was housed in. Hmm. Okay, sorry, I just wanted to read that again. Half of the second story of the main building had been knocked out to make vaulted ceilings, but this room, which seated 40 people quite comfortably, have been kept for special meetings, such as tonight's Friends of the Library meeting. Bill sent Carrie's competition for the position of president of the Friends of the Library was dressed in a dark brown corduroy blazer with tan suede elbow patches over a pale blue turtleneck. So when she talked about Bill earlier, a few pages back, I was thinking it was going to be some sort of competition for, I don't know, like for mayor or something like that. But they take this library thing seriously. His jeans were pressed with razor sharp creases, and his heavy winter boots showed not a trace of the mud and slush that covered the walkways outside. Lindsay wondered how he managed that. Bill was tall and thin, with jet black hair that Lindsay suspected was dyed, as he had to be well into his 70s. Wow. His most common expression was one of irritation. He always had one eyebrow raised higher than the other, and even when Lindsay said hello to him, she got the feeling he felt interrupted by her good cheer. Not for nothing, but she certainly hoped Carrie was voted in as the new president because working with Bill had become tiresome. She'd even put up with Carrie's obnoxious husband if she had to. Hmm. I used to raise my eyebrow. I used to practice raising my eyebrow sometimes. I thought it was cool. As the meeting went through roll call, Lindsay turned in her seat and glanced out over the town park, which was empty. Then she tried to pick out some of the thumb islands in the bay, which were visible in the dark evening only as tiny lights on the water. Finally, she glanced at the town pier. The pier was long and wide and had two big pole lights, which kept which kept it illuminated at night to deter. It says deter, but I would think that they're trying to say detour, whatever, deter vandals from harming or stealing the boats docked in the bay. At the base of the pier was the Blue Anchor, Mary's restaurant. Oh, okay. That's the name of her restaurant, the Blue Anchor. It was the residents' favorite watering hole, and judging by the light spilling out of its windows, the cafe was doing a bustling business even on this bitter January evening. Lindsay caught some movement on the pier, and her gaze took in a tall man, his lanky build discernible even under his thick pea coat. He wore a fisherman's knit cap over his mahogany curls. Am I an avid reader? Um, I used to be an avid reader. I didn't have any specific authors in mind or any specific subjects in mind. I just read books a lot when I was younger. All like I used to read books a whole lot, and I now with work full time with the type of work that I do now, it's kind of hard to read. So during my leisure time, if I read something, I guess it's just fun to read with someone that like kind of like makes me read it if I read it out loud to others. So yeah. Thank you for those who are listening. Okay, so let me get back to it. Okay. All right, so Lindsay caught some movement on the pier, and her gaze took in a tall man, his lanky build discernible even under his thick peacoat. He wore a fisherman's knit cap over his mahogany curls, but Lindsay knew it was him, Mike Sullivan, known to the locals and tourists as Captain Sully. She tried to ignore the burst of pleasure she felt at the sight of him and failed miserably. I thought she probably liked him. Sully had become a good friend over the past few months. He shared her love of reading, and she found his quiet presence comforting and intriguing. She told herself she would have felt the same rush of if she spied Nancy or Violet walking on the pier. Yeah, right. I'm a little confused about the last sentence. What? He shared her love of reading, and she found his quiet presence comforting and intriguing. She told herself she would have felt the same rush of happy if she'd spied Nancy or Violet walking on the pier. Oh, okay, she's waiting for her friends to be there too. Yeah, right. She watched Sully bunch against the frigid wind that blew in from the water. At the end of the pier, he turned and ducked into the anchor, probably to see his sister Mary and grab some dinner. Lindsay had a sudden longing to be at the anchor too. When she turned back to face the room, she noticed the tension in the lecture room was as thick as a spring fog and much more uncomfortable. Both Carrie and Bill would now address the group, each offering their vision of the future of their friends at the library. Carrie had changed out of her hospital scrubs and looked very professional in a gray wool skirt and matching blazer over a pale pink blouse. She wore thick black stockings to combat the cold with a pair of stylish boots. She looked every inch the efficient person that she was, and her presentation included a PowerPoint that outlined a well thought out proposal with realistic expectations to raise funds for the library. Bill's presentation was technology free and read like a grocery list of things he had accomplished while being president, some of which sound more fictional than the books on the shelves in the library below. Finally, they were ready to vote. Lindsay checked out the assembled group. There were about 20 members in attendance. The cold weather had kept most of the elderly friends home, and much of Briar Creek's summer population was not in residence at the moment, making their turnout even fewer. Mimi, I remember how when I used to live in Wisconsin, how I liked dressing, like how they described Carrie's outfit with the wool gray skirt um, and the thick tights to go with it. Okay, Mimi Seitler, the secretary, asked Carrie and Bill to wait in the hall while the members voted. Lindsay felt sure this was to keep any of the members from being intimidated into voting against their inclination. Bill yanked the lapels of his blazer with a snap as he surveyed the room with his left eyebrow up in its usual arch. I trust you'll all make the right decision. He can't say that to them because, yeah, he can't be trying to, intimidate them before they even leave the room. Carrie said nothing. She merely gave a small smile and a wave and followed him out the door. When Bill looked, or I mean, I'm sorry, they're leaving the room. The two of them are leaving, not the people who are voting. Carrie said nothing. She merely gave a small smile and a wave and followed him out the door. When Bill looked to be lingering in the doorway, Mimi shut it in his face. Lindsay had no doubt about how she would be voting. Let's get this over with, Mimi said. She resumed her seat at the front of the room. All those in favor of Bill Sent remaining president, raise your right hand. No one moved, not even a finger fluttered in an upward direction. All those in favor of Carrie Rushton becoming our new president, raise your hand. All of the hands went up. It was Carrie by a landslide, not a big surprise. Mimi opened the door and ushered the two candidates back inside. Carrie looked nervous. Bill looked smug. Oh dear. Lindsay had a feeling this was not going to go well. Oh my gosh. After all the votes have been counted, it has been decided by the friends that Carrie shall be our new president. Carrie looked surprised and pleased, while Bill opened his mouth and shut his mouth. His left eyebrow arched so high it could practically scratch and itch at his hairline. Thank you all, Carrie said. I promise to do my very best. Bill glowered at her and then the group. I will not concede, he said. I demand a recount. He's acting like it's like he's supposed to be like in office or something for the White House or something. Okay, so chapter 3. Oh no, Mimi said. You really don't want to do that. Yes, I do, Bill insisted. In fact, I demand it. Mimi sighed. She gave Bill an exasperated look like she didn't think he had the sense to look both ways before he crossed the street. Fine. There is no need to do a recount. It was unanimous. Everyone voted for Carrie. Bill gasped as if she'd slapped him. That can't be. His gaze scoured the room, but everyone avoided eye contact. Is this true, Doug? Bill glowered at an older gentleman sitting in the back row. Look at me, Doug. Doug Dowd, wearing a pressed shirt with a string tie, twisted his gloves in his hands and glanced quickly up and over the top of Bill's head. It was enough. Bill turned to frown at another older and chunkier man in the third row. Warren? Warren was braver than Doug. He raised his hands in a placating gesture and said, Now don't go taking it all personal, Bill. I can assure you, Warren, Bill snapped, it is personal. Lindsay would have felt sorry for him if he weren't such a pompous windbag. Well, I suppose there's nothing more to be said. He stomped over to his chair and gathered his overcoat and briefcase. He had trouble tying his scarf around his neck as his hands were shaking. The entire room watched him go. No one offered to help him. Now Lindsay did feel bad for him. She rose from her window seat and gestured to Mimi that she was going to check on him. Mimi gave her a nod of thanks. Bill must have been moving at a small run because Lindsay didn't catch him until he was just stepping out the front door into the cold. Mr. Scent, Bill, she called. He spun around quickly as if he had been expecting someone to call him back. He looked disappointed to find that it was Lindsay. What? He snapped. Are you here to gloat about your victory? Excuse me? She asked. The blast of cold air made her long to step back into the toasty library, but she didn't want to offend him any more than she already had. Library directors don't attend friends' meetings, he said, unless they're presenting some information. But not you. Oh no, you were there to witness me getting voted out of office. What did I ever do to you? I'm sorry, Lindsay said, but I had nothing to do with how the vote went. Of course you did, he argued. Everyone wants to impress our new little library director. Did you tell them all how to vote and then decide to show up to make sure they did? No. Ha, he scoffed. Well, now you've got what you wanted. Little Carrie Rushton will run around and do your bidding with no ambitions for the group other than to fund your ridiculous children's programs. I hope you're happy. Lindsay wanted to tell him that the more he opened his mouth, the more she was delighted with the outcome of the election, but it didn't seem like the most diplomatic way to assuage the ruffled emotions of the former president. Your service over the years has been much appreciated, Lindsay said. We would welcome your advice and input in any capacity you care to share it. Get stuffed, Bill snapped, and he tossed his scarf around his throat and strode off into the night. As she watched him stomp toward the parking lot, stomp toward the parking lot, she saw Marjorie Bilson. Sorry, let me read it again. As she watched him stomp toward the parking lot, she saw Marjorie Bilson come hurrying up the walk. She was a tiny thing, petite and skinny, and full of nervous energy. She reminded Lindsay of a sparrow hopping about with sharp eyes, a sharp beak, and plain brown feathers. She too was a member of the Friends, which Lindsay found odd since Marjorie was not much of a reader. Marjorie stopped next to Bill and put her hand on his arm. Lindsay had noticed that the tiny woman looked at Bill with a certain amount of worship in her brown eyes. Lindsay couldn't see why, but who was she to judge? Bill shrugged her off and said some terse words that were muffled by his scarf. Marjorie emitted a shriek of horror, which even from 30 feet away, Lindsay heard quite clearly. Then she clapped a mittened hand over her mouth and followed Bill out to the parking lot. This couldn't be good. Marjorie was probably the only person who would have voted for Bill, and obviously she had missed the vote. Lindsay wondered if Bill would demand a new election based upon that alone. She stepped back into the warm library with a sigh. She could feel a pair of eyes watching her, and she turned to find the indomitable Miss Cole, who ran their circulation desk, watching her. Mr. Tupper never had any problems with Bill as the president of the Friends of the Library, she said. She gave Lindsay a look of disapproval over the upper edge of her reading glasses. Wait, who on earth is Mr. Tupper? She stepped back into the warm library with a sigh. She could feel a pair of eyes watching her as she turned to find the indomitable Miss Cole, who ran their circulation desk, watching her. Mr. Tupper? Is that just a silly name she's giving him? Mr. Tupper never had any problems with Bill. Oh, so Mr. Tupper is someone. With Bill as the president of the Friends of the Library, she said. She gave Lindsay a look of disapproval over the upper edge of her reading glasses. Lindsay sighed. Mr. Tupper, the former director of the Briar Creek Public Library, if I'd have kept reading, had been perfect in Miss Cole's estimation. In the 9 months Lindsay had been here, Miss Cole had never missed an opportunity to make a comment that found Lindsay wanting in comparison to the hallowed Mr. Tupper. Always a monochromatic dresser, Miss Cole was usually in shades of gray or beige. Today she had thrown caution to the wind, and she was in varying shades of purple from her opaque violet stockings and grape lollipop wool skirt to her bulky lavender sweater. Instead of softening her mannish features, however, the pastel colors seemed to wash out the skin tone on her portly person, leaving her looking a bit jaundiced. Mr. Tupper was an extraordinary man, Lindsay said. She had discovered that if she praised Mr. Tupper right away, it saved her from having to listen to even more of Miss Cole's critique of her performance in comparison to her predecessor. With a curt nod, Miss Cole glanced back at her computer and the stack of books she was checking in. She was clearly pleased that Lindsay had come to revere the legend that was Mr. Tupper. The circulation desk was quiet, as was the rest of the library. Lindsay glanced around the room, soaking up the homey atmosphere. The children's area had been picked up, and Beth sat at her desk in the middle of it, cutting out snowflakes for her storytime craft the next day. Jessica was manning the reference desk on the adult side of the library. Two high school students were quizzing her about a list of books they needed for their required reading. They appeared to be asking for the Cliff Notes version, which Jessica was providing but also discouraging. Two people were on the bank of internet computers at the end of the room, and one patron had fallen asleep in the cushy chair by the magazines. Lindsay made her way over there. She wanted to wake the poor guy before Miss Cole saw him. She had been known to drop the heaviest book she could find beside beside an unsuspecting snoozer, giving the poor person a small heart attack. As Lindsay got closer, she recognized the sleeper. It was her friend, library board member Milton Duffy. His bald head shone under the overhead lights, and his mouth was slightly agape, framed by his silver goatee. Lindsay gently shook his arm. Milton, psst, Milton. He jolted awake and leaned forward with his reading glasses in one hand and his favorite yoga magazine in the other. I was worried because I was thinking that he was going to be the one that was murdered. He turned, and when his bright green eyes met hers, he grinned. Lindsay, you're just the person I was looking for. Just give me a moment. Certainly. He rose from his seat and assumed the mountain pose. From here he went into a deep forward bend. Milton was a certified yogi, and Lindsay had learned not to rush him when he was in a posture. She waited as he slowly rose to an upright position, vertebrae by vertebrae. With a deep breath in and a sharp exhale, he gave her his full attention. So, how did the election for the Friends go? He asked. As always, Lindsay was surprised by how deeply in the loop Milton was about the library's going on. She she should she should be used to it by now. As the chairman of the library board, he generally knew what was happening every even before Lindsay did. Carrie Rushton won, Lindsay said. I'm surprised you weren't there, Milton. You're a member of the Friends. I felt it might be a conflict of interest, what with me being on the library board and all, he said. Lindsay just stared at him. Okay, he relented. Bill and I have a history, and I didn't want to do anything that might jeopardize Carrie winning the election. Lindsay raised her eyebrows. What sort of history could Bill and Milton have? How could he just throw that out there and not tell her any more? She continued to stare at him, unblinking. Oh, fine, he said. Lindsay grinned. The unblinking stare, it worked every time. We both dated my Anna in high school, but she chose me, and Bill has never gotten over it. Milton brushed an invisible piece of lint off his navy tracksuit. He didn't meet Lindsay's gaze, and she got the feeling he was embarrassed. Why do I think there is more to this story? She asked. Not really, Milton said. Then he sighed. Bill is a very bitter man. He never got over losing Anna to me and tried to best me at everything I have ever done. I went to Yale, he went to Princeton. I bought the oldest house in town. He inherited his family's estate, which is the biggest house in Briar Creek. I married Anna, he married her cousin. It's ridiculous. You'd think after 60 years the man would get over it. I could see why you abstained, Lindsay said. That was a good call. Milton opened his mouth to say something, but just then Miss Cole announced that the library would be closing in 10 minutes. Lindsay glanced at her watch in surprise. Where had the evening gone? She heard the sound of footsteps and saw that the friends were making their way down the stairs at the end of the room. Miss Cole heard them too, and she hushed them as only Miss Cole could do. It sounded like something between a snake's hiss and the crack of a whip. The friends immediately quieted down. Most of them waved and kept on walking out of the building, but Carrie and Mimi stopped by Milton and Lindsay to talk. Milton pumped Carrie's hand up and down in congratulations, and she beamed. I'm so excited, Carrie said in a rush. Mimi and I have a ton of ideas to help get some cash flowing into the Friends bank account. Warren told me we have some rare books that have been donated to the Friends. If we can't use them in the library, I bet we could sell them in an online auction and make a fortune. She's going to be a great president, Mimi said. No more of Bill spinning his wheels in indecision. We're going to make some changes. That's wonderful, Lindsay began, but she was interrupted. The library is now closed, Miss Cole barked from behind the circulation desk, and they and they all jumped. The others exchanged startled glances and hurried toward the door. We'll talk more tomorrow, Milton said to Lindsay. Ladies, may I escort you to your cars? Mimi simpered and Carrie grinned as Milton bundled up and led them out the front door into the brisk January air. Lindsay helped shut down the building, switching off the computers, copiers, and coffee pots, and finally setting the alarm. Even after almost a year, she still got tense when she only had 15 seconds to get out the back door after she activated the system. Per usual, Miss Cole set off across the parking lot to her compact sedan without so much as a good night. Do you think the lemon is aware of how off-putting her personality is? Beth asked Jessica and Lindsay as they stood watching the older woman stride away. I think she likes who she is, Jessica said. The lemon is all about maintaining order, and I think the library gives her a place, her own little corner of the universe, to maintain order within. I think it gives the lemon a purpose. That sounds about right, Lindsay said, and I do think she enjoys her work in her own way. Miss Cole had been nicknamed the Lemon long before Lindsay had come to work in Briar Creek, so she didn't feel it was her place to tell the staff not to call her that. Besides, with Miss Cole's perpetual pucker of disapproval, it was hard to argue against the name, as it was a dead accurate description. Do either of you want a ride? Jessica offered. You're going to freeze biking home in this. We're tough, Beth said. As if to prove it, she made a muscle with her right arm, which was completely invisible under her bulky coat. Crazy is more like it, Jessica said, and she climbed into her car with a smile and a wave. Lindsay thought she might be onto something with the crazy comment. When she had moved from New Haven to Briar Creek, Lindsay had committed to a greener lifestyle and sold her car. She hadn't really considered how cold that lifestyle would be, however, when winter came. Buck up, Beth said, as if sensing her unhappiness about the bike ride ahead. Just think how much better your butt looks now that you're biking every day. Yeah, and I'm going to need a firm behind to keep people from noticing the toes that go missing due to hypothermia, Lindsay said. Are we feeling a little whiny? Beth asked. No, yes, a little, Lindsay said. Come on, get moving. You'll warm up and feel better, and you can reward yourself with a decadent dessert when you get home. Beth wrapped her scarf about her head, dumped her purse and book bag in the basket on her bike, and set off on her cruiser. Lindsay watched the blinking light on Beth's bike, alerting motorists to her presence, then followed her example, trying to ignore the stinging cold that made her eyes tear up. What had she been thinking when she sold her car? On Sunday, she was going to look at the classifieds. Surely there was a small economical and environmental vehicle out there that wouldn't harm the planet and could get her from point A to point B and keep her from feeling like a human popsicle. Mercifully, Briar Creek was a small town and she only had about a mile to go to get to her house. She followed Beth to the end of Main Street where the road forked. Beth went to the left toward her beach house and Lindsay to the right to her top floor apartment in an old captain's house. At least the roads were clear now. Last week after a snowstorm, she had to walk for 3 days until the bicycle path was clear enough to be used again. With her long curly blonde hair stuffed securely in her helmet as extra insulation, her ears were completely muffled and it took her a second to register the sound of a car engine coming in her direction. She knew even with her blinky light on, she was not very visible. So she glanced over her shoulder to see where the car was, and her heart stopped in her throat. With its high beams on and its engine revving, the car was headed straight for her. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. That's the end of chapter 3, and I'll pick up tomorrow for chapter 4 because I think that's a good stopping point to see who it is that's in the car behind her and why on earth that they headed towards her like that. So I'm thinking it's going to be, you would think that it would be Bill who's upset about losing, but who knows who it's going to be. So I'm gonna share some of the dolls just in case. Let me see if I should turn the light on. Okay, so give me just a second. Give me just a. And put my little bunny rabbit away in his cage. He's got a little fat belly. He just got finished eating his hay. Give me just a second, you guys. I'm coming right back. Oh boy. Sorry, you guys. I'm trying to get his there we go. Okay, trying to get his cage back in order. There. There we go. Okay. All right, so thank you for those of you who have joined. I appreciate you. Okay, so I've got this one here, which is the newest doll. I should open that other box, but maybe I'll do it tomorrow because I hadn't even thought about that. So this is the twin that I got a few days ago. He's a boy. And his name is Lanny. I think it'll be short for Lance. Lance and Lindsay. This is Lanny. Little Lanny boy. And then his sister, who I need to change because this outfit is too big. Well, I mean the pants are too big. All right. That's his twin sister, Lindsay. Oh, her cute little hat. The hat that the artist put inside the box is cute on her. I think it's cute on her. That's Lindsay. And I don't know, the way this jumpsuit fits her. I don't know, this jumpsuit, the way it fits all the dolls, it's just kind of weird. It's the right size, but just the way it fits is kind of strange. So, oh, thank you, Marie. That's so nice of you to say. I appreciate you. Hello. Thank you so much for joining. How much can you bench press, says Jason? Um, so like when you, thank you for the hearts. So when you're laying on your back on the bench press, on the bench, and you're pressing up, I would say that I could probably bench press 30 pounds, and that's it. I think that's probably the most that I've ever tried. How much can you bench press? Okay, so Lindsay's outfit can go either way with pants or with a shorts romper. Look at that little baby's hair. She's so cute. Got these cute little turquoise to go with her. Thank you, Robin. Okay, watch how cute this is gonna be on her. When I put this on her yesterday with the hat and the socks, it was so cute. It was so cute. Makes me think of Lindsay Lohan. I think that Lindsay Lohan's natural hair is red. Okay, so there she is in her little turquoise. Oh my gosh, you guys, just look at how sweet that is. Thank you for the likes. I don't know if that was likes from a long time ago because I was busy reading. So, but if they are new likes, thank you all the same. Just let me see. Oh, hold on. Let me turn her around. Hold on, you guys. Let me see how cute she is because this hat. Yeah, look at this. Oh, you guys. Look at how cute she is in the. Look at how adorable. Mm-hmm. That's Lindsay. Wait, hold on. I'm not liking the way it's looking now. Hold on a second. Because it was looking cute yesterday. Maybe it's because of the lighting. Hold on. It was looking super cute yesterday. Or maybe that was earlier today. When it was nice and light. There we go. She's so cute with her little brown eyes and her little mouth. Yes, that's her with her brother. Aren't they so cute together? They're so cute. Brother and sister, twins, adorable little babies. I can't wait to take them out for a walk in the stroller. I'm not sure where I'm going to go with them, but okay, so that's them. And I've got one more doll. One sleeping doll. Okay. trying to remember how I posed her. There we go. Can you guys see her? I gave her little piggy tails. She's so cute with her little booties on her feet. Look at that little baby hand. He looks like a real little baby hand with those tiny fingers. And her little mouth is open while she's asleep. And her little pigtails. So cute. Hi, Dominion. I gave her little pigtails today. Let's see. Doesn't she look like a real little baby? A real little newborn. She just got finished eating. And so now that put her to sleep. Just gotta get her to burp a little bit before I lay her down for the rest of the night. She's such a good baby. She never really cries that much. And she's not a fussy eater. And she's growing as she should. She's been weighted and she's weighing exactly what she's supposed to weigh for her age. She's just almost 2 months old. She's a preemie. Look at her cute little baby head and those little piggies. Hi, Anno. Hi, Crystal. Hi, Madison and Morgan. Yes, it's not a real baby. That will make a cute picture. Thank you for the, I'm not sure if those were hearts or not, but thank you. Doesn't it look like a real baby when I'm holding it like that? Like the baby is asleep after eating in its mama's arms. So nice. Look at that little baby. Okay, you guys, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to read the rest of the story tomorrow. Not the rest, but part of it tomorrow. So come back tomorrow, okay? Good night. Bye.